All right, guys, welcome back to the Pocket Mads channel. It's Maddie here, and today we have a really fun video. We're going to be highlighting some community decks that you guys have built and uploaded to the community feed on PocketMads.com. It's a really fun feature of PocketMads.com. You're able to build decks on the website and then upload those decks to the website so that all of the other people can view them. This is really cool because our website also generates a QR code. So basically, you're able to see what other decks other people are building on the website and then scan those codes, put them right into your game. So I wanted to highlight those deck lists. And again, you guys have been uploading some really creative ideas and some things that I haven't really thought about. So this is something I want to do more on the channel. It not only gives me the opportunity to highlight PocketMads.com and our features on the website, but also highlight you guys, the community, and some of the ideas that you have. So if you are interested in perhaps being involved in any of these videos and having your deck showcased, head on over to PocketMads.com, build some decks, and then share them with the community. It's a whole lot of fun. So that's what we're doing today. And again, we will be doing it a bit more regularly here on the channel. Before we get into the decks, though, you're going to want to go register for PMPT number 43. Link to register down in the description below. This is the last tournament of the B4 Ruler of the Skies season. In fact, the trailer for the next set coming releases in just a couple of days, which is kind of crazy. It's crazy how fast the season has ended, but you're going to want to stay tuned because we're going to be covering all of the new meta progressions and changes that are coming to the game. The World Championships are also at the end of this month, and there is a panel at the Pokemon XP event, and they're going to be doing a Pokemon Pocket sort of announcement showcase. It's going to be exciting. I'm really curious to see what's around the the corner for Pokemon Pocket. But anyway, link to register down in the description below. Definitely go and play in PMPT number 43. But let's dive into the deck list. So use the timestamps down below to navigate through the video if you would like to. We're also going to have the QR codes for these deck lists. So the first deck list today is going to be from Tomid RR06. I apologize if I'm pronouncing the name wrong. And this is Shadow Chase. This is a really interesting idea between Hoopa EX and Umbreon. I have not seen this yet, but it is a very synergistic combination, so I wanted to spend some time talking about it. They say they haven't tested it yet, which is hilarious, but he feels like Umbreon can really complement Hoopa's bench damage very well, and I honestly do agree. This does make a lot of sense, but I just never thought of it. Now, it's clear to me that they haven't tested this deck list, so there's a couple of things I want to talk about it. But the general concept between Hoopa EX, as we all know, one of the most popular new Dark-type Pokemon in the game, very aggressive, does really strong bench damage. It's a basic Pokemon, 2 prizes. And Umbreon EX pairs extremely well with it, because if you don't remember, if you don't know, Umbreon EX, which came out in Wisdom of the Sea and Sky, has 140 HP, does 80 for 2, but it has Cyrus as an ability. As long as Umbreon is in the active spot, you basically have a free Cyrus every turn. So Hoopa comes in, puts some pressure on the bench, and then we can kind of go into Umbreon and clean up that bench Pokemon. It's actually a really fun strategy, and one that I think makes a whole lot of sense. Now, what's funny to me, again, and shout out, by the way, to Tomid RR06. It's funny to me because he said he hadn't tested this deck, and when I was looking at it, I was like, yeah, something seems off here, and I realized they didn't add a Pokeball, a single Pokeball or anything to the deck list, which I think is funny. He was playing, double Eevee, 2 Umbreon EX, and then Hoopa EX, of course, but he was playing 1 Bombardier and then 1 of the Dark Binding Umbreon, which shuts down basic Pokemon, which just can be a pretty interesting card. I don't think it really synergizes that well with the deck list, and to be fair, there's nothing else in the deck to deal with something like Oricorio, so maybe we kind of, get rid of Bombardier and Umbreon for something else. The thing about Bombardier in this deck list is that, yes, it's going to give your Dark Pokemon less of a retreat cost, but Eevee isn't a Dark Pokemon, so it's not going to take the advantages of Bombardier, which is why I would probably cut Bombardier from the deck. Dark Binding Umbreon can't shut down Oricorio, quite frankly. So, maybe we do just keep it into the deck list, but you're going to want to squeeze in Pokeballs somewhere. We are still playing 1 Small Balloon on top of 2 Deceptive Needle and 2 Lucky Ice Pops, so we do need some retreat. Maybe we can keep a Small Balloon, and maybe we swap that for an X-Speed or 2. They're playing PCL, Sabrina. No Cyrus, because of course you don't need Cyrus in this deck list. We have Umbreon, double Research, double Copycat, and an Elegant Cape to kind of bring Umbreon up to 170 HP, which is a pretty good number. It's weak to grass, not fighting, but you still probably will get KO'd by Lucarios in this current meta. But no, this is a really fun deck, and I think that the concept here does in fact make quite a bit of sense. I really love the synergy between Umbreon and Hoopa. You guys should try this out for yourselves, because I think this does sound really, really fun. It's almost like Hoopa was kind of designed potentially to be played with Umbreon, but there's a lot of really other strong Dark type Pokemon in the game, things like Absol, things like Darkrai, which do see play with Hoopa, and Cyrus as a card, of course, always sees play in Hoopa as well. So there's definitely something to be said about just sort of playing those other strong dark Pokemon with Hoopa and then playing Cyrus in your deck, but you can't research into Cyrus, right? So Umbreon is pretty effective. It's a much more consistent effect because you kind of have it whenever you need to, right? When you have Umbreon, and it also does 80 damage, which, you know, similar to Darkrai is a powerful attack. Keep in mind, Hoopa can also hit for 100. So, you know, it is an additional option, but I do like this concept. I really think this deck makes a lot of sense. Funny to me, I think they forgot to add in Pokeball, which is totally fine. You guys can just sort of maybe, you know, cut a card or two to put Pokeball in there. But yeah, I wanted to highlight this deck because Hoopa Umbreon does make a lot of sense. It's very, very clever. Here's the code. Again, copy this into your game. Just remember to throw Pokeballs in there because you're going to have a bad time if you don't. Maybe swap around a couple of cards, but the general concept I really do like, which is kind of cool. So yeah, there you go. Next up is going to be a Mega Gallade Cook. This is from X Skadoosh, which is awesome. He says, really fun Gallade Cook. Not sure yet if using this or the new Ralt is better. You can also try and experiment with swapping out one copycat for something like a Juliana. Now, this is going to be a lightning type Mega Gallade deck. They're also playing one of the non-EX Gallade, which if you didn't know what this card does, it came out in Pulsing Aura. It's also 2 colorless energy to 70 damage and 70 more if there's a Stadium in play. And trust me, there's always a Stadium in play. So this is a pretty strong effect for 140, quite frankly. I do like this card. Now, they are playing double copies of Wally. And here's the thing with Gallade, and a main reason why I don't think it's seen that much play is that it just is a 3 energy attacker, and it's a stage 2 Pokemon where we have Lucario, which can effectively still hit for 140, but it's a stage 1 Pokemon, right? So it's almost like, why would we play Gallade? To me, I think the answer of that, and the answer to that is the colorless energy and the attack cost, right? And this is a deck that I think does showcase this quite well. We're able to play Oricorio, we're able to play Pichu and slow down a lot of these decks and have an alternate sort of win condition and you know, slow the game down to kind of give us some time to set up Mega Gallade. The other thing you got to keep in mind is that in that head-to-head matchup with Lucario, Mega Gallade is not going to get KO'd. It does have 220 HP, so it is safe. Right? It is safe. We are playing Arena of Antiquity and Corina, so we will be able to KO Lucario. So there is some merit there. I think that Wally is, in fact, a relevant card. It's seen a little bit of play this season in decks like Charizard EX, and there's other scenarios as well where I think Wally could be relevant. It released alongside 2 pretty strong Stage 2 Mega Pokemon in Mega Gallade, as well as Mega Metagross this season. But those are 2 cards that, again, maybe just weren't strong enough to warrant enough play in the metagame right now, which was very fast-paced, very aggressive, and in a metagame currently that definitely sort of rewards more consistent decks, and decks that aren't necessarily considered high roll strategies. Whereas, you know, when you're playing Gallade and you're playing those rare candy type decks and you're playing Wally, they definitely feel like really explosive decks, but more high roll decks. And that's just not really the way that the metagame has gone. So to me, it makes perfect sense that kind of the best way to play Gallade is in a slower deck with something like Oricorio. He's playing the Teleport Ralts, right, instead of the new one with Lead. The Lead Ralts is an interesting new card. Teleport is always nice because Ralts isn't something you really want in the active, so being able to teleport out is definitely important. But the new Ralts does grab a support card from your deck, which, you know, is generally a really, really strong concept here. And since we are playing, you know, rare candies and we're playing Wally, there's not that much room in this deck for other things. So again, you know, I'm not saying that Mega Gallade is better than Lucario. I did think this card had a lot of potential with Wally. But as it turns out, you know, there just really isn't that much benefit to playing, you know, more of a high roll kind of, like high risk, high reward type deck in a current metagame, and we have things like Mega Lucario. But if you were wanting to play Gallade and you wanted to play a fighting type deck, you can play a dual energy type deck because Gallade, again, just has 2 colorless energy in the attack cost, which means we can pair it with virtually anything. So that flexibility is nice. And as we see here, Pichu, you can turbo 2, you know, your Ralts and get Gallade up and running a turn earlier, or you can utilize Oricorio. And maybe we only run fighting energy in this deck, right? I mean, maybe we just are playing Pichu, but only fighting energy. It depends, you know, test that out. Let me know what you guys think. But I really do enjoy Gallade, and a lot of people have theorized about it this season. It just never really ended up being something that was that popular, especially because Mega Lucario, as an old kind of deck and an old concept, was actually and is currently the most played deck. It's the most popular archetype this season, which is just an interesting thing to note. Mega Metagross we'll talk about later because, again, it falls into the same category of like colorless energy, kind of a flexible attacker. Like, it's something that you can play a lot of different ways. We'll talk about Metagross in a little bit. But yeah, here is this Mega Gallade deck. Here is the code. Shout out to X Skadoosh. I love it. Love Gallade, and I really do think this is a strong deck. I might have already highlighted this before, in fact, on the channel. I don't really remember, but I do like it, and I think that there's a lot of ways we can play Gallade. And I just like to talk about Gallade. It's just not something that's been that heavily speculated. Still, not many people building decks around Typhlosion. People are going to ask me about that. People just aren't, I don't know, they're not playing Typhlosion. They're not even building decks around it, which is funny. But anyway, next up from Christopher J. Haggard is going to say, this just makes sense, is what he says here. And this is Magnezone Mega Rayquaza. Now, this is something that people have been playing, in fact, to some online tournaments. I have seen it a bit, right? So Mega Rayquaza as a Pokemon, is really easy to include in your deck. It's just not something that necessarily takes up any space at all. Now, typically, people play Mega Rayquaza with Rainbow Cave, they play Dragonair, and it's a deck that's really built around, utilizing that whole package to set up Mega Rayquaza and other attackers to attack, right? And it typically sees play with like Gouging Fire or Drampa or Dragon Arcana Altaria. But this is a deck that literally is just playing Magnezone or Oricorio, just like you typically would. Now, they are going to be playing dual energies into this deck. So you're playing fire and you're playing lightning. The concept here is you slow the game down tremendously with double Oricorios. Maybe you just sort of go through one Oricorio and then the Magnezone with Mirror Shot, which also can slow the game down pretty effectively. And then at the end, we're just piling up our energies on Mega Rayquaza for one final strong attack to potentially, win the game. We are playing an Elemental Switch in here. We still have one Clement. We're even playing May as well as Protective Poncho because as we're slowing the game down, Mega Rayquaza is going to be pretty susceptible on the bench. And we're also playing Lycia because double Magnemite. So I do like this deck list and I do like the concept here. I think there's a lot of potential for Mega Rayquaza in terms of how you can play it. I think this is one of the few ways that you could play Mega Rayquaza without needing to play Dragonair. I find that quite interesting. There might be more in the future, but to me, Oricorio with one lightning, one colorless, Magnezone, and Magneton being able to generate their own lightning energy, it does sort of make sense to me. So if you wanted to kind of play like Magnezone Miraidon, but basically not play Miraidon, you just play Mega Ray. It does, in fact, kind of slot into the traditional Magnezone or an Oricorio deck somewhat well. So I just wanted to highlight this. And I have seen this a little bit. At least early in the season, I did see it. And I find it to be very, very cool. Shout out to Christopher. Again, just a deck that I don't know if we've really talked about much on the channel, but a pretty interesting concept. So there you go. Here is the code. And again, guys, if you have any cool deck ideas, if you want to share anything, even though it's like pretty late in the season, but when the new cards come out and they get uploaded to the website, right, and we get into the next new season, feel free to hop into PocketMats.com, start building some deck lists, share them, with us in the community, and you might get featured here on the channel. Next up is going to be Kai'Sa's deck. Kai'Sa, he's going to be his take on Mega Gallade as well. So another Mega Gallade deck, a more defensive build. So this is what I was talking about, right, with Mega Gallade. You can play it so many different ways, which again, maybe none of those are as good as just straight fighting type Lucario, but it is very interesting and flexible, which is cool. Very nice for deck building. Thinking heavily about double Mega rather than regular Gallade. Again, just because this new regular Gallade is strong, but as we know, Mega Gallade is also strong. And just losing to Oricorio. Because again, if you're not playing the non-EX Gallade, you will be losing to Oricorio. Probably exchange Julia for Serena and Arven for Copycat. Not sure what's best. So very interesting. But here we go. This is what he's calling Wally Shore. So Mega Gallade, but it's going to be a water type variant of Mega Gallade. And because we are playing Mantike and we're playing dual energies, playing water and Gallade, you have access to all of the really cool water type package stuff because you are playing water energy. So you can access Irida if you wanted to. Soothing Shore is going to be really nice to kind of heal up Gallade even more. This is a deck that is playing Wally, but it's playing Juliana. We're playing Lily. We're playing Arven. We're playing Lucky Ice Pops. I like this, right? Now, this is a deck that is playing the new lead Ralts. So this lead Ralts pulls supporter cards from your deck, and it is in fact quite good. We don't necessarily have a way to attach and retreat out, but that's sort of fine. I mean, you'd have to just discard the energy to get out of the active with Ralts, which isn't the end of the world because you can just Mantike the energy back onto Ralts, maybe get a Wally later in the game. Again, this is a concept that you're going to be able to see with Gallade and Mega Metagross, and in fact, I do believe we have sort of a water type mixed Mega Metagross deck to highlight in this video. And I think it well illustrates the upside, the potential upside to playing, Gallade and Mega Metagross, because these are colorless attackers for the most part. So you can play them so many different ways. Again, if you're playing Gallade and Mega Metagross, you'd probably want to play a baby Pokemon, which kind of defines the additional type that you're playing. Unfortunately, though, like you couldn't do like Magby and Fire because I mean, you could, but there's not a lot of synergy for fire. Like if you're playing Flame Patch, you have to be playing fire Pokemon and not just fire energies. Whereas Soothing Shore does take advantage of the fact that you don't have to be a water type Pokemon. You just have to be playing water energies on your Pokemon and they get healed by Soothing Shore, which is definitely pretty cool. Arven here is nice. It's going to be able to find Giant K, but it also finds your item cards like Rare Candy, like Pokeball, like Lucky Ice Pop. Juliana to find your stage 2 Pokemon, Wally for the extra energy, Lily for the 60 healing, Cyrus because why not? And yeah, I mean, again, it's a very tanky build. Mega Gallade has 220 HP with a Giant Cape, that's 240. Between Soothing Shore, Lucky Ice Pop, and Lily, you're actually going to be able to extend your HP across a lot of different attacks. And, you know, a lot of the top meta decks right now, maybe excluding Mega Lucario, don't actually deal that much damage up front. They are, you know, typically decks that just don't deal like a ton of damage in one attack. It's sort of like they're aggressive and they're consistent, but they're not a lot of them are like super heavy hitting. So I really like this concept. And one that I think, again, also works for Mega Metagross, which I think we will be highlighting here in a little bit. So very similar to the last deck, whether it's Lightning and Gallade or whether it's Water Gallade, you know, all of these different types have access to these different sort of benefits. And I think Mega Gallade can capitalize on that. Big shout out to Kaisi. I really like this deck. Very, very cool idea. If you wanted to play this water type, you know, synergistic, you know, Gallade deck, this tanky water type Gallade deck, then go check it out. For sure. Very, very cool. I've seen some like Mega Medicham decks this season that are utilizing Rainbow Cave in the more consistency, I guess, or more consistent, I guess, generation of different energy types. That's certainly pretty cool. Mega Medicham is an interesting mega. But yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to push Gallade propaganda. I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to tell you that this is going to be something that's like better than Lucario. But it does have some benefits in the head-to-head matchup. And also you can be a lot more flexible with how you build it. You're not locked into only fighting type energy, which is pretty cool. Anyway. Next up, this is going to be Ben M's deck. This is High Roll Metagross. And again, this is going to be a water type tanky, just a maximum tanky Mega Metagross build, which I really do love. He says here, I think we're playing Mega Metagross wrong. Instead of trying to get as much metal energy on him as we can to swing for big numbers, I think it's better to get him in the active ASAP and just attack for 120 to 140 damage. If you go second, you can get Mega Metagross in the active and swinging for 120 on your second turn. And after that, you're doing progressively more damage each turn for as many as 4 or 5 turns before you get KO'd, which is true, right? And performs well against Hoopa and Vespiquen, and it can hold its own into Lucario, which again is another big benefit of some of these Stage 2 Pokemon. It's interesting that not many of them see that much play, considering that these are some of the only Pokemon in the game that don't get one-hit KO'd by Mega Lucario, right? And Mega Lucario is super popular, so you think it would make sense. But Metagross, when you combine it with the Water type, to me, and this is a deck that I really, really like, seemingly has a lot going for it, right? Soothing Shore for the extra healing, but also Metal Core Barrier, rather, for the damage reduction, right? So it's kind of the best of both worlds in that sense. 230 HP is crazy, especially when you're taking minus 50 from attacks and you're healing extra damage with Soothing Shore and Lily. Like, it's a really cool concept. Now, there are some issues with Mega Metagross, and a big one is that it doesn't deal that much damage, right? If you don't know, Mega Metagross for 3 colorless energy does 100 damage and 10 more for each metal attached to Mega Metagross. And now a lot of people definitely play this with like Orthworm, and they play it like with only steel energies, and they try to pile up energies onto Mega Metagross. But truthfully speaking, you're probably not really ever that consistently, at least, going to be able to one-hit KO certain Pokemon. Things like Hoopa EX F150, which means you need 5 metal energies on Mega Metagross to hit for 150, which to me like is sort of the downside, right? All of those Pokemon that are at that 140 to like 160 HP range, they're just going to be pretty difficult to KO. But that's not, to me, the upside of Mega Metagross. The upside is that it can 2-hit KO almost anything in the game, and it can survive getting 2-hit KO'd because of all of the extra healing and damage reduction effects and the insanely high HP pool. The new Beldum here is also nice. So this might be the first Beldum in the game. I don't remember. But if you have more than one Beldum in play, it has free retreat, which is nice. So, you know, if you can kind of get into it, you can get into your Mantike easier and start generating more energies. And again, the Mantike here is really just a turbo Metagross that you can even play dual energies in this deck list, so you can more consistently utilize Soothing Shore's healing. And then again, Lily, Metal Core Barrier, Soothing Shore on a 230 HP Mega Metagross is going to make it very difficult to get KO'd. It's just going to end up living. These are types of decks that are sometimes pretty popular in Pokemon Pocket, but really not as much as you would think. And I think Metagross actually does make some sense when I take a look at the current metagame. Like, it is something that could pretty easily, stand up to a lot of the top tier meta decks because they just don't deal enough damage, and Metagross kind of just sits there and attacks turn after turn. So there is some potential here. I wonder if there just is not enough, strength or worthwhileness to play these sort of rare candy decks because, oftentimes like the pacing of certain decks of this, current season are just a little bit out of control, in fact. And, if you're not a Pokemon that can get up and running on turn 2, turn 3, sometimes you do miss the rare candy and the evolution Pokemon, then you're not going to win anyway. And it kind of seems to me like that's the main downside with these types of decks. Rare candy just isn't that popular of a card this season. That being said, I really do like Metagross, and it does make sense alongside Gallade as a Pokemon that you could play with other types and utilize the advantages of those other types. Water is a good example, and Lightning is as well. A really, really cool deck. Shout out to Ben M. You'll love to see it. Here's the code. I have tested this deck out myself a little bit. I tried it maybe with Alicia, tried to kind of, maybe more consistently, get the leadoff options to be, what you kind of want them to. This is kind of an aggressive deck. It's more of a high roll deck, so you want to lean into the early game consistency. But I really do like it. Shout out to them and this really cool Metagross deck. These are just sort of Pokemon that not many people have talked about this season just because they aren't necessarily that meta relevant. That doesn't mean they're bad. It's just, they just didn't end up being that popular. But next up is going to be Lyn-X D-Dragon, which is a really cool deck. And this is going to be an Armarouge Milotic Celebi deck, a fire, water, grass deck. Now, I think this deck only plays fire energies, but let's see. Let's see. So since Armarouge only needs 1 fire energy, which it does, it's got double colorless in its attack cost, getting such a reliable ramp partner like Milotic EX can help him start swinging real quick. And that is very interesting. He says running dual energies isn't so bad now since we do have Rainbow Cave. In fact, in an ideal situation, you could start attacking with Armarouge on your second turn. The only weakness to this deck is that it has no reliable or choreo counter, which is definitely a problem for certain strategies. But yeah, so this is a deck where, again, if you were to play dual energies, you can utilize Soothing Shore, Elegant Cape. So this is a really nice package, in fact, around Armarouge, right? Because Elegant Cape works for Milotic and it works for Armarouge. And now we have Soothing Shore to even further kind of boost the healing and the survivability of some of these stage 1 Pokemon. But Armarouge takes minus 30 damage from attacks. It takes 30 less damage. So this thing is like really tanky. Not many things hit for 170, but even if they do, you Elegant Cape to Armarouge, and now you effectively have 200 HP, which is pretty cool. 3 energy, 120, you discard a fire energy from this Pokemon, which does make it a little bit scary to play dual energies, because if you run out of fire energies, then you're not able to attack anymore. But we are playing Elemental Switch and Milotic to kind of turbo potentially to Armarouge, and we do have Rainbow Cave and Flame Patch, which are really good cards to keep Armarouge up and running. And then Milotic here is kind of just like a battery. It's like an energy battery, but it can be a secondary attacking option. Now, the Time Recall Celebi is very, very interesting, but I actually really do like it, mainly for one reason, is that you can basically use Milotic to leap out and then go back into Armarouge if you do get stuck with Milotic in the active. You don't really have to worry about being able to attach and retreat, or you could use it to protect with Armarouge, right? So that even if you don't have the energies to attack with Armor Cannon, you could potentially flip a coin and then be immune from damage for a turn. So you could stall out in a couple of different ways. I actually really like this deck. This is probably like the most creative deck I've seen like all season. It does make some sense. Like, again, like Armarouge only has 1 fire energy in its attack cost. So we're playing 1 Wallace, 1 Soothing Shore, 1 Rainbow Cave, 1 Elegant Cave, 1 Elemental Switch, 1 Flame Patch. It's like every card in this deck like does have a purpose. And this is one that I thought was just like super, super interesting. I don't think I would have ever thought to play Milotic EX with Armarouge, but there is some potential here, and definitely something that, could be extremely fun to test out. This is like one of the more spicy deck cooks I've seen this entire season. It really is crazy. A really creative deck list. Shout out to Lynx D Dragon. A really, really cool deck. Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think of this. Here's the QR code. Try this out for yourselves. Get in there. If you wanted to play on the ranked ladder or play in a tournament with something that is just completely out there, super wacky, then here you go. Also, Milotic is just a broken card anyway, right? Like with the sleep. There's not that much sleep counter in the meta right now, so maybe Milotic is somewhat worth playing. Definitely a really cool deck. Like this is why I wanted to make this video, because some of you guys are just uploading some of the craziest decks to Pokémads.com, and I really do love this, and I wanted to give you guys, the shout out and the credit. So shout out to Lynx D Dragon. Armarouge Milotic is nuts. Okay, next up is another one that I'm really excited about. This comes from Dis Pillow, and this is Poison? What is this? I don't know. Pionson poison? I don't know what he's talking about. Basically, he says here, Seviper plus Deceptive Needle plus Nihilego can do a combined 60 damage and 90 if your opponent doesn't have PCL or the like per turn. And Dragalge is an okay finisher, draw Scalp with Lycia, and then Pokeball to get your Nihilego. So there is some conceptual synergy here. Dragalge is a Pokemon that's never been terrible. I'm gonna lie to you. It just, you know, especially with like Sleep kind of becoming the default like status condition deck and it being counterplayed a lot, you know, poison type strategies really did fade out of the metagame. But this is a Pokemon here. If this Pokemon is attacked and is damaged by an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, you poison. So it's got the poison point ability and it just does 80 damage. So 150 HP. It is a stage 1 Pokemon, dark and colorless. I do like Dragalge. It's definitely a very solid Pokemon. But I want to talk about the new Seviper, which came out in Pulsing Aura just somewhat recently. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned, 20 damage for 1 dark. So when you combine this with Nihilego, you know, you could deal up to, you know, what is that, 20 extra damage with poison or up to 30 if you have double Nihilego. But as they mentioned here, if you have Nihilego and you have Deceptive Needle, then yes, in fact, you can deal an absurd amount of damage early in game. So it's a very aggressive attacking option. And as you know, Nihilego does synergize pretty well with Dragalge. So it's really just sort of a poison, you know, ping damage type deck with a Deceptive Needle. I really do like it. 1 Small Balloon, 1 Repel, 1 Lycia. I do like Lycia and Field Blower in this deck list. Now, interestingly enough, we're not playing like an Elegant Cape, which could bring Dragalge up to 180, which is definitely a decent number. It's a cool strategy. You know, these aggressive, you know, kind of poison dark type decks, there is some merit here. Nihilego, again, just hasn't seen play for a little while, mostly just because Sleep became so popular. So everyone was playing status protection and Sleep just kind of went to the, you know, fell to the wayside. But yeah, no, it's a really cool strategy. And I think that this Seviper is, in fact, a really strong card with Deceptive Needle. Like, even if you don't have a single Nihilego, it's 20 plus poison plus Deceptive Needle. That's 40 damage, but they're going to be taking 10 more at the end of their turn. So that's pretty easy to just kind of get the 50 off. And if you do have Nihilego, it also ends up being 50 damage, which will KO a lot of basics. So I do like this strategy. It's sort of like a pure poison dark type deck and one of the better ones that I think I've seen for quite some time. So I really do like this deck. This one is super awesome. Shout out to Dis Pillow. Really, really cool. Shout out to Dragalge EX as well. Dragalge is one of my favorite Pokemon. I think it's a Gen 6 Pokemon. I just think it's really unique. It's poison and dragon, I think. Skrelp's not a dragon, but I think Dragalge is. So it's always been a very unique Pokemon. It also has a Mega now. So we very well could see Mega Dragalge in the future, which hopefully it's like somewhat similar to Dragalge. It could be really fun. Anyway, I'm just sort of, you know, going off the rails here at this point, but I did like this deck. And I really like Seviper, Nihilego, Deceptive Needle. So there you go. Here's the code. If you wanted to play a very aggressive, you know, poison type deck. Now, again, is this better? The thing is this better than just playing the new Absol, right? That just hits for like 60, I think, if you have Deceptive Needle. Probably not, per se. You don't need the Nihilegos. And Hoopa, as we know, is like super broken. So, you know, Dark, there's no shortage of really aggressive, strong Dark type decks in the game right now. So this is definitely one of those, like, you know, like kind of lower on the totem pole type options, but it definitely is pretty cool. So there you go. Okay, lastly here, let's take a look at a deck that I just really love because it's utilizing a Pokemon also uploaded by Dispillow, by the way. It's utilizing a Pokemon that I genuinely have not thought of at all, and that's going to be Walrein. So this is Turbo Lock. This is Mega Sharpedo. So you can ignore Mega Sharpedo's downside by preventing your opponent from being able to play Cyrus in the first place. You could definitely experiment with only one Walrein line, but I don't know, maybe you can replace Copycat, I guess, is what he says. I love it. I love the candid sort of talk here. But anyway, it's Mega Sharpedo, right? It's a Wallace Mega Sharpedo deck. I think we all love Mega Sharpedo, but he's pairing it with 2 Pokemon that do synergize quite well with Mega Sharpedo. Let's talk about Walrein. Walrein is such a cool card, and it did come out in this set with Ruler of the Skies. I don't know. I just passed over this deck, this card rather, but it does actually make some sense. It's a stage 2 water type Pokemon, 160 HP, retreat cost of 4, so this thing is not getting out of the active. 4 energy in the attack cost, but again, we do have Mega Sharpedo to kind of power this thing up somewhat easily. 110 damage, and your opponent cannot use any supporter cards from their hand during their next turn. So again, like he said, a lot of Sharpedo decks struggle with the fact that after you retreat into a different Pokemon, you could get Cyrus back up and lose the game. Fortunately, though, Walrein stops that from happening. So effectively, you just kind of get into Sharpedo like really, really quickly, and then you get into Walrein, and you know, it's a really tanky like single prize Pokemon that's supporter lock. And it does, in fact, make some sense in my mind. Like, this is a card that does seemingly synergize quite well with Sharpedo, and it also does 110 damage, which should not be understated. That is, in fact, a pretty strong amount of damage. They're playing double rare candy, double Spheal. It does have a retreat cost of 1, so it's really not that terrible of a Pokemon. And they're also playing one Psyduck, which does 10 damage for a colorless, and it also is supporter locked. So if you don't manage to get the Walrein up and running by the time you do need to get out of the active with Sharpedo, you can stall for a turn, go into Psyduck potentially. Maybe it works that way, maybe not. I do like it though. I do really like this strategy. It's something I want to test out. Mega Sharpedo, definitely one of my favorite cards in the game right now. And it did also come out in Ruler of the Skies. Maybe I forgot about Walrein, I'll be honest with you. But yeah, these two cards do in fact work pretty well together. It could be very interesting. I don't know if it's better than Wild Swing Gyarados, but certainly interesting. 160 is a good number. Lucario's not going to KO you because you're not an EX, and you do hit for 110 damage, which is kind of cool. One Wallace, one Wally. So Walrein can utilize Wally, which is pretty nice. I don't know if you necessarily need it, but maybe you do. I don't know. And yeah, one Copycat, one Cyrus, double Research, and X-Speed. So try out this deck list. Comment down below what you guys think, because I really like this cook. This is something that I think is like super... Like, it makes a lot of sense. To me, like, this is something that you would think people would be playing this season, but no, people went a different direction with Sharpedo, right? They played it with, like, Wild Swing Gyarados and Chien-Pao and stuff, which is certainly quite strong, if we're being honest, but I do really like this deck. This is a concept that I think is really, really cool. So I wanted to highlight it to you guys. Shout out to Dispillow, and shout out to everybody else that we highlighted in today's video. Again, guys, I'm going to be doing this a bit more often, so definitely hop on over to PocketMads.com, build some deck ideas that you have, share them with the community, and you might find your way here on the Pocket Mads channel. Try out these deck lists. Here's the code, by the way. Try out these decks. Let me know what you guys think of them. If you have any ideas, things you would change, I don't know. Well, let me know. But again, we talk about the meta in the top placing decks and stuff so often on the channel. It's nice to kind of take a step back and, just kind of talk about some really more interesting, casual, creative type strategies that, haven't won a tournament, but, were created and submitted by you guys. I find that to be really fun. So I want to do this a little bit more on the channel. Go check out PocketMats.com, link down in the description below. Also, don't forget to go register for PMPT number 43, which is this upcoming Saturday. Really, really excited about that. All right, guys, I'm going to get out of here. Peace out. Have a good one. We'll see you guys later. And yeah. Bye.